Good evening, everybody. Today we will start our first lecture in endocrine physiology as a section of human medical physiology 2. The first lecture will be about an introduction to endocrine physiology. So it will be an introductory lecture. For that, I arranged the content of the lecture as major points to form something like brain mapping. First of all, let's underline that the endocrine system is the second major regulatory system in our organism. It works hand by hand with the first regulatory system, which is the nervous system. But there are some differences between these two regulatory systems in the onset of action, duration, and the scope. The onset of endocrine system is slow, while that of nervous system is rapid, as you remember from the neurophysiology in a human medical physiology 1 lectures. The duration of action of the endocrine system is long-term one, while that of nervous system is short-term duration of action. But the scope of both the nervous and endocrine system are numerous and wide and variable. But the endocrine system actually as a regulatory system accompanies our life since our intrauterine life in the uterus, as far as it regulates the growth of the fetus, the determining of gender. Of course, it contributes to the determining of the fetal gender with the other important factor, which is the gene. And it also regulates and controls the growth of cells and tissue during the intrauterine life. The childbirth itself is a hormone-dependent process or function. The breastfeeding during the first months of life is also depending on hormones, and so it is within the scope of the endocrine functions. Our growth in childhood, in puberty, in adolescence, and till the end of our life, it also a function of the endocrine system. Our sexual maturation and the reproduction is also an endocrine function. For that, as we see, there are similarity and differences between the two major regulatory systems in our organism, the nervous and endocrine system. Endocrine system act as an intercellular communication in our organism. As you remember, there are at least 4 intercellular communicating systems in our organism. The first one, which is the autocrine, by which a single cell releases a biologically active substance that will affect the cell itself by binding to a receptor on the cell membrane or inside the cell, whatever, to cause a response. This is called autocrine. The paracrine system, when a given cell releases a biologically active substance into the interstitium that will bind to a receptor on a neighboring cell, closed cells, and causes a response in the other cell. This is called a paracrine. The juxtacrine is similar to the paracrine, but the difference is that there is no distance between the two cells, but one of them releases biologically active substance that reaches directly to the other cell via the gap junction, as you see, and causes a response. But this intercellular communicating system is more common in the embryological life or in the intrauterine life more than in an adult. The fourth one, which is our topic, is the endocrine. When an endocrine cell, whether it is a cell in an endocrine organ or a cell in a secondary endocrine tissues or organ, release a biologically biologically active substances that is called hormone. The hormones are transported via the bloodstream to reach far cells, which are called target cells. So in the endocrine intercellular communicating, we have endocrine cell, bloodstream, and far or further target cells, and the biologically active substance that is called hormone. The hormones are transported either in free form in the blood or bound to plasma proteins. For that, one of the important functions of plasma protein is transport of hormones. For example, the albumin is a universal transporter that may bind and carry in the blood any hormone, and there are plasma proteins which are specific in transporting a given hormone. For example, the TGD or thyroid binding globulin is specific in transporting of thyroid hormones. The ABG, the androgen binding protein, is also specific in transporting the androgen hormones. Okay, so after we have an idea about the endocrine, sorry, there is a D here, about the endocrine mechanism, let's now view what are the endocrine glands. Before, we also know about the 8 classical endocrine glands, but now we can subdivide the endocrine cells or hormone releasing cells into 2 major categories. The primary endocrine glands, which involves the 8 classical glands, which are the hypothalamus, the pineal gland, the hypophysis or pituitary gland, the thyroid gland, parathyroid glands, endocrine pancreas. As you know, the pancreas is a compounding gland. It has exocrine part and endocrine part. The iris of glands, as you know. The suprarenal gland, which has a cortex and medulla, both of which release different hormones, as we will see later. And the gonads, we have a male gonad, which is the testicle, and female gonad, which is the ovary. Those glands are called the classical or primary endocrine glands. But during the last years, the scientists discovered that different organs and tissues in our organism may release hormone as a secondary function. For example, the stomach has a primary function, which is digestion of food, but also has a secondary function in releasing hormones. The liver has different primary function. First of all is the detoxification, but it has a secondary endocrine function as far as release hormones. For example, the liver release angiotensin hormone, release erythropoietin or hematopoietin hormone with the kidney, of course, as the kidney release let's say the largest share of the erythropoietin, and the liver release lesser amount, but it releases erythropoietin or hematopoietin. It also releases a hormone that is called hepcidin, which regulates the cellular content of iron, as it blocks the release of iron from the cells. It also releases a hormone that is called thrombopoietin, which contribute to differentiation of cells in bone marrow into megakaryocytes, which later will be the thrombocytes. It also has a hormone that is called beta-poietin, which has a tropic effect on beta cells of the pancreas, the cells that release pancreas. So the liver is considered as a secondary endocrine organ as far as it has a secondary function, which is releasing hormones. The stomach, as we mentioned, has primary function, which is the digestion of food, but also release at least two hormones that we know, which are the gastrin hormone, which contributes to the regulation of digestive functions, and the ghrelin, which contributes to regulation of the appetite. The intestines continues as primary function. The intestines has primary function, which is continuing the digestion and the absorption, but also has a secondary endocrine function as far as the intestines release numerous hormones, for example, the secretin, the cholecystokinin, and others. The kidney has a primary function of urine formation, but it is also a secondary endocrine organ as far as it releases some hormones like the erythropoietin, as we mentioned shortly, and the other hormone, which is the renin, that contributes to arterial blood pressure regulation through the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. The bones also has a primary function, which is support of the organism and contribution to movement, but also have a secondary endocrine function, as the bones release at least two newly discovered hormones, which are the osteocalcin, that has tropic effect also on beta cells of the pancreas and increase the insulin sensitivity in the peripheral cells. The adipose tissue is one of the richest secondary endocrine tissue in our organism, as far as it releases at least 150 biologically active substances. The major one among them is the leptin, which decrease or suppress the appetite and increase the energy expenditure. It has been discovered in 1994 in Rockefeller University. Okay, so there are two categories of glandular structures related to the endocrine functions. The primary ones in form of the 8 classical glands that we described shortly, and the secondary endocrine glands, which are within other organs that have other primary function and secondary endocrine function. The hypothalamus and the hypophysis, of course, both of them form a major regulatory system for other endocrine glands. For that, we can also subdivide the endocrine system into central one, which include the hypothalamic hypophyseal axis that master the functions of other glands. For example, the hypothalamus release hormones that regulate the hormones of the hypophysis. For example, growth hormone releasing hormone and growth hormone inhibitory hormone, both of them regulate the somatotrophs or somatotrophic cells in the anterior pituitary gland, which from its side release the growth hormone. Thyroid releasing hormone released by the hypothalamus will influence the thyrotrophic cells in the anterior pituitary gland that release TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, which will be released by the hypophysis or the anterior pituitary gland and affect the thyroid gland to release T3 and T4. The dopamine, for example, inhibits the prolactin hormone, which is released by the hypophysis, and so on. The pineal gland, which is found in the brain, it releases at least 3 major and important hormones that contribute to regulation of mood, sleep-wakefulness cycle, appetite, and others, which are the melatonin hormone, the serotonin, and the DMT, which is dimethyltryptophan. Thyroid hormones, as you know, has follicular hormones, which are T3, T4, that contribute to almost all of the metabolic functions of our organism, and the parafollicular cells or C cells that release the hormone that contribute to calcium regulation, which is the calcitonin. The parathyroid glands, which are neighboring thyroid glands, release the parathyroid hormone, an important hormone in regulation of calcium concentration in the blood. The pancreas has at least 4 cells that release different hormones. The alpha cells that release glucagon, which contribute to the glucose regulation in the blood. Beta cells that release the well-known hormone, the insulin. And delta cells which release the somatostatin, which is a universal protein inhibitory hormone. And the F cells which release what is known as PP peptide or pancreatic peptide. It has a role in regulation of the exocrine function of the digestive system. The suprarrenal gland, as I mentioned, has a cortex and the medulla. The cortex releases the most important hormones in regulation of fluid electrolyte balance, such as the aldosterone, mineral corticoids, the major representative is aldosterone, and the glucocorticoids that contribute to the regulation of metabolism and enable the body to cope with stress. The adrenal medulla release the catecholamines, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and other hormones, and the gonads that release the male sex hormones, testosterone or androgens as a whole, and the female gonads that release estrogens and progesterone. Okay, we will go through those details related to endocrine glands and related to hormones and the classification of hormones in the next lecture. But today we will answer about an important function, why we are studying the endocrine physiology as a part of the human medical physiology. Of course, to understand better how our functions are regulated from one. So, why we are studying endocrine physiology? First of all, to understand how the functions of organism are regulated. But on the other hand, it's quite important for the student of medicine to understand how the underlying mechanisms of endocrine diseases work or caused, because the endocrine diseases are much common, and it's important to treat them to understand how actually the endocrine system function in healthy people. The endocrine diseases are actually a result of excessive release of hormones. For that, most of those diseases begin with this prefix hyper, or due to lack or decrease. For that, most of those diseases begin with the prefix hypo. Okay. Some examples, only some examples of about the excessive or abnormal excess of endocrine release. For example, let's remember the hypothalamus and hypophysis as master glands. For example, the hypophysis releases the growth hormone. If there is an excessive release of this hormone in the childhood, there will be the disease gigantism. But if there is an excess after the puberty, after the closure of the epiphysis of bones, there will be the well-known disease, the acromegaly. On the other hand, if there is a lack or decrease in the growth hormone, there will be dwarfism or nanism or Lorentz syndrome. But the last one is not due to excessive hormones or lack or decrease of hormones, but depends on decreased sensitivity of the growth hormone receptors. We all know or at least heard about the hyperthyroidism, which is a disease that depends on an excessive release of the thyroid hormones. On the other hand, we know about the hypothyroidism, which is due to lack or decrease of the thyroid hormone. For the parathyroid hormone, there are two major diseases, the hyperparathyroidism and the hypoparathyroidism. Each of them affect the calcium regulation and the calcium homeostasis in different ways, as we will study later. The pancreas, all of you heard about the diabetes mellitus type 1, which results from destruction of beta cells and lack of insulin release, or diabetes mellitus type 2, which results from decreased sensitivity of the insulin receptors to insulin. There are a lot of endocrine disease that depends or that due to disorder in the suprarenal cortex, either by excessive release, such as in Cushing syndrome, or lack or decrease, such as in Addison disease, and a lot of diseases related to disorders in the gonads, whether male or female gonads. But this will be discussed in the following lecture. I will do my best to meet you through the YouTube every evening. Bye, God willing.